Hi, this is Sergeant Betsy Brander Smith with the National Police Association, and this is the National Police Association podcast. I have somebody with me, literally, that I have been trying to get on this show for probably a year, and I'm so
Yes.
excited that we finally got to connect in person. We text and pay attention to each other on social media. Um, but he's a guy with a lot of law enforcement experience, and he also has his own podcast. And he's kind of, as a police officer and just as an American, he has lived through some of the big changes that we have seen in law enforcement over the last 15 years. And he knows how to talk to people. So I thought you needed to meet him. Antoine Thomas, welcome to the show.
Yes. I appreciate it. So glad to be here.
I know. I'm so glad to finally get you on. So I have to
Yes.
start with this because I always ask people this. Why the heck did you become a cop?
Well, my first show that I launched a couple of years back in 2022, I believe it was, might even been 2021. I coined it, becoming a police officer is a calling. Um, Built in the Judeo-Christian values of course, I'm a devout Christian and I speak on those matters. And I believe God's called me to be a police officer. And I tell people all the time, as a field training officer, this is a calling from God, not from man. And I'm also a second generation police officer. My uncle, who God rest his soul, he recently passed, but he served with the Plantation, Florida Police Department honorably, and so it's always been in my blood. I enjoyed it, always respected police and looked up to them. And again, it is a calling from God. So that is how I got involved.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because
Yeah.
I feel the same way. It's not, you don't go into police work because I need a job because I got to pay my mortgage. It's not that kind of job, right? It truly is a calling. And in fact, there are many verses that we can turn to in the Bible that literally discuss that
Absolutely.
calling that we have. And I see every single day in this country police officers who run toward the shots, who bring little kids out of fires, when the firemen don't get
Mhm.
there in time, and so many other things. And you don't do that for the money. You do that because it's a calling. So talk about your career a little bit. What's been fun, what's been not so
Yeah.
fun. Tell folks.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm in my 15th year. I'm going on 16 next year. And I say it to people all the time. It has not been all rainbows and gumdrops over the 4 years ago. Well, now almost it's going on 8 years because we're getting ready for a new election. We had a rogue sheriff that took over the sheriff's office. I was actually a sheriff's deputy. And I was in that category of what people state when they hear about what types of powers the sheriffs have, that they can fire you at will. Well, I'm going to use the word just for a moment. I don't like to use this word, Betsy, but I'm going to do it for just a sec. I was a victim of working at the will of the sheriff. I was forced out. Many other deputies were forced out, detention officers, people like that during that time. And it was mostly stated due to political beliefs. I'm on the right side, and that sheriff was on the left, and had a good relationship with the former sheriff who lost the incumbent, had lost the election, served for 16 years, and also served on the same side as he does politically. So I didn't align with the new sheriff's ways, and so I was let go. And that was a dark moment in my police career because that was actually the still to this day one of the greatest agencies I've ever worked for, and it was due to the sheriff. And unfortunately, when I was let go, it happened to be COVID was sliding in right before the George Floyd fiasco, believe it or not. And that's when I was let go. So that was a dark moment, but of course, God has restored me and I'm back to doing what I love. But it hadn't always been rainbow and gumdrops. However, I still love it. And it's the highlight of my life outside of now being married. But being a police officer. So it's still fun. Times have changed. I know we're going to dive into that, but still, I tell people, still the best profession to me on earth.
Yeah, absolutely. You never have the same day twice, right? That's one of the
That's
best
right.
things about this job. Here's something that I'm not sure everybody really understands this. When you work for a police department, like I did, your chief is hired by either your city manager or your mayor or whatever. For you guys and gals who work at a sheriff's department, generally speaking, your sheriff is chosen by the people. And so that can change. It can change every 4 years. It might not
Mhm.
change for 20 years, depending on, what's happening. But a sheriff is a politician as well as the head law enforcement officer. And I'll be honest, back when I started in the 80s and even on into the 90s, the political party that your sheriff was a part of, for you, the deputy, didn't really matter that much. And in fact, when I was most of the time that I was a police officer, we didn't really talk a whole lot about politics, unless we were having lunch or something like that. It just really wasn't an issue. I didn't even
Right.
know the politics of most of my coworkers. And
Hmm.
now, really from 2014 on, right? It's really become
Absolutely.
this issue. And here you are. You're a bit of a unicorn, right? You're a Christian conservative police officer. Um, how does that how does that affect you? Obviously, it affected you greatly, right? Because you got let go by your Democrat sheriff. And but how does that affect you just with your values and your decision making and things like that as well?
Well, first of all, well said in that order, right? Christian, conservative, and a police officer in that order. Very, very well said. It definitely affected certain things, and honestly, I sort of saw the writing on the wall, but I didn't take heed to it. Actually, my mother had a couple conversations with me, being that I served with Blexit and Turning Point for years. Actually, I am one of the not founding members, but one of the long, we'll call it OG members of Blexit, and now we've launched with Turning Point. But during that time, the only really black conservative organization that was making moves even during COVID, so it blew up. But that's when my political career took off. But being in that environment and people, being able to look up what we did, finding out who Candace was, and of course, a lot of enemies on that turf because they don't like the way she speaks, and all this kind of played a role. And then, of course, being a Trump supporter, all that went into the job. Unfortunately, it played a major role. And what I always said was my job never affected the politics of it. Didn't care if you're a Democrat, Republican. If we got called to your residence, we handled that matter. Or if we were on the streets and we stopped the car, didn't ask what political affiliation that you were belonging to, which is still the same to this day, right, Betsy? But it played a huge role in my career as I was advancing. Actually, was demoted before I was even let go, and so these things are taking place in 2025, and it started. I would say around the 2020 era. Even, of course, I got let go in 2019, but we started a trend and a shift. Let's just say when President Trump took over, let's just be honest, 2016 is the highlight when people really started going rogue, if I could say, if I can use that expression.
Absolutely. And when
Yeah,
you talk about Blexit, and I want to explain to folks what that is. What that means is black
yeah,
exit. That means the black
right.
exit, from far left, uh, you know, the far left belief, in being a victim and the whole
Hmm.
world's racist and all those things. We here in Southern Arizona, we have the co-founder of the whole Blexit movement, Brandon Tatum,
That's
who's a
right.
friend of ours. He's been on the show. He's a friend
Hmm.
of the National Police Association, and he was a Tucson, Arizona police officer where I live now. And I've actually had different Blexit folks. I had the California director on the show before, and that's one of the things that we are so appreciative of Blexit and the Blexit movement, and especially your work with Turning Point,
Yeah.
because y'all walk around at conferences and at, tabling at different events and stuff. You have all these phenomenal back the blue stickers and things like that, where you are unabashed in your support of constitutional law enforcement, right? And that's every cop, you and me both, raised our right hand when we were young baby cops and took an oath to the Constitution, first to this country and second to our state. And that's so important, isn't it, when you're talking about American law enforcement?
It 100% is. And I believe, again, we hear this all the time. Why did you? That's like one of the main questions they ask. You remember this, Betsy, when you go for your first application, they want to know, make you fill out an essay. They want you to tell them why you're motivated to be a police officer. And usually everybody has that same, at least at some point, phrase in there that they want to help people. And that is still the belief today, that we want to do that. Our hands have been tied over the years, but I still believe, again, being a field training officer, a cop who trains new officers, my position is that we have to still go out and do the job, no matter what it looks like, as long as we're abiding by our policies, of course, our laws, and as long as it's moral and ethical, we have to do it. We don't care about the cameras out there. We don't care about making the 6 o'clock news if we're doing what we're supposed to do. And that's where politics get a little meshed in, and it creates a atmosphere for cops to hurt themselves or have somebody else hurt because they're not willing to do what they really was trained for, because they're afraid of the aftermath of it. But I believe that we still have to get back to the days when you were out on the streets, Sergeant Betts said. We got to get out there and make it safe for our communities, not worrying about cameras and taking pictures of what we're doing. As long as we're doing it right, who cares?
Absolutely. And in fact, we were talking about this before the show. You are one of those cops who was here for the evolution of body-worn cameras. And that really came after the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, where he was killed by a police officer after he had done a strong arm robbery. He was trying to disarm the police officer who stopped him, and he was shot and killed. And so there was this huge push for everybody to get body-worn cameras. And again, a lot of us had dash cameras then, but body-worn cameras, first of all, they're expensive, and the system that regulates them, that every police department has to have, is also expensive. Now that price has come down, but it's complicated. You know what that's like because you wear one every day. And but you saw that evolution. What was that like the first couple of weeks that you worked with that body-worn camera at the insistence, frankly, of our political class?
Absolutely. Well, I've always been a police officer that said that why did I need a body cam? I know what type of cop I am, and hopefully my supervisors and those that the chiefs and the sheriffs that run these agencies understand too. But then as I progressed on and started to wear them, I understood now. Exact matter of fact, I did a show before talking about body-worn cameras, why they're important to wear, and what I've come to find out through not only through the actual real life research, and I'm gonna use research as if because I wear them every day, I found out that they actually are more beneficial to the police officer. Because what we find now is that everybody wants to complain on the cop, even if it's not even true. And really now, you remember, Betsy, back in your days, you had to get in there and file a real complaint by showing up and writing something down. Everybody wants to do it by phone and social media and the internet, and there's no face-to-face contact. So we don't know if these people are telling the truth or not. You can't read them. But those body cams give you play-by-play, and it also diminishes many complaints, and it also helps out the safety aspects of it. But really, I would say 90% is for you to be able to really see what took place and to be able to say yay or nay if that person who's claiming you did otherwise, if it didn't happen, it's going to show on that camera. So they're very beneficial, and I changed my trajectory on how I thought about them. I wish we would have had them many, many years ago.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think most cops echo your sentiment that I wish we'd have had them when I started in the 80s, because that would have, you're absolutely right. It would have saved a lot of, complaints and lies and things like that. And now we're actually seeing this trend among some on the far left who say body cameras aren't fair, body cameras are racist, things like
Yeah,
that, because now they just show what cops deal with. And
that's right.
I mean, there's whole YouTube shows based on just body worn camera where people, pick them apart. And I have friends all the time that say to me, I know you used to tell me stories, Betsy, of what you dealt with on the street. I didn't really believe you until I saw these shows with body worn camera. And
Yeah.
and it's true. I think most people don't really understand what it is that we deal with. So you were a cop in 2020 and you had issues with the agency. But then, in the midst of the whole George Floyd thing and protests and all that kind of stuff, you decided to start a podcast.
Yes.
And it's called Fighting for the Truth. Talk to me about the evolution of that.
Absolutely. Well, Betsy, as you know, last year we were trying to make this happen. It was called the Real Talk Podcast Show. Took a sabbatical because I had took on a full-time position with Turning Point and being a full-time cop. There was a lot going on, so I took a huge break. And so I decided when I came back, I was going to do a rebrand, relaunch, a rebrand, and all that good stuff. So I've took some time to pray on it. Even talked to my wife about a name what she thought would be good. I threw some names out. She actually loved the name Fighting for the Truth. And then I met with one of my colleagues who actually built the logo and all that good stuff. He loved it. I say, this is the show I need because what we want to do, we've always been fighting for the truth, but now it's time to really dive into it. And I always say on my show that I talk about police matters, the good, bad, and the ugly of it, because I'm always sometimes when I'm having cordial debates, people automatically assume if they're on the left or maybe not really a person who enjoys cops, they think I'm always going to side with the police officer, but that's actually not the truth. And I know you do the same, Betsy, on your show. We tell it like it is. And whatever the chips lie, we have to tell it because that is what the motto of my show is: buy the truth and sell it not. Proverbs 23:23. So we're going to be doing that as we always did, but a new brand name I thought would be clever and also it would raise the eyes. And so that's what we're doing on the Real Talk. But that came to me actually sitting around the table with some of my fellow Blexit members. They said, you ought to, well, some said I should have became a comedian because, of course, I haven't got you laughing yet, Betsy, but I'm a class clown. But I said, no, comedian's not really my well, but I always wanted to do a podcast and say, you have the voice, you have the personality for it. You should do that. And so that's what really motivated me. I took some time to think on it. And one day I just decided to launch out, and it's been a highlight. And a lot of my coworkers enjoy it. A lot of former coworkers watch and keep up with me there. So I enjoy it. I've interviewed tons of different people, cops, firemen, politicians. And so it's a highlight, and civilians. And it's been a highlight of my time when I'm not in the police seat.
So here's the thing. Podcasts are where most young people and some of us oldsters get most of our news and information. I am walking around with headphones in for at least half of the day because I'm listening to my different podcasts, whether it's news podcasts, I got my Bible podcast, I got my cop stuff podcast, all that stuff. And I even have like a couple of cooking podcasts, things that'll kind of clear my mind, right? But
Right.
this is the thing, and this is the thing that we talk about the legacy media or the corporate media. They hate that stuff because they want people to get their news and information from them. One source,
Right.
television, maybe a little newspaper, things like that. But shows like yours and people like you are the new media. And in fact, I'm going to throw this down. A year from now, I want to see you sitting in that new media spot at the White House, going to a press conference
I would love it.
because that's what it's all about, right? Is getting information in so you can get information out to people.
Absolutely. Because we have to hear from all sides. And Betsy, I enjoy it. And you can vouch for this. I text you every time I get a chance to see you on Newsmax. You're always do a beautiful job, and you know what you're talking about, and you bring a different type of atmosphere to the show if you have a co-guest on there with you. It's always good to listen and hear your perspectives because you may not be wearing a uniform, but you have your ears to the ground researching and listening and have tons of people that I'm sure you connect with who are still in the profession. And I'm one of them now, right? And so you do a great job there. And so I would love to see more of that. And that is my goal to maybe at some point, get a call and say, hey, we want you to come on these different news outlets and talk from your experience. Because what I'm noticing, there's a lot of talking heads outside of you and some retired people, a lot of people who are not in the profession. They can speak on it, but they're not in it at the moment. And so it'll be good to hear from another side. But I just want to bring the truth and let the truth again fall where it falls. But again, we're not going to sell it, but we will buy it. And whoever takes it for what it's worth and does their research and figures out, hey, this is not a bad deal after all, because cops are humans and we're just people that are trying to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And uh, that's one of the things about the Turning Point organization is it's just normal people who had a really big impact
Mhm.
on the last couple of elections. And again, we're not, the National Police Association, we're a charity. We don't get involved in candidates and things like that. But
Right.
obviously we pay attention to politics, we pay attention to legislation. And in fact, we're
Hmm.
asking our national legislators to pass some of these bills like the Protect and Save Act that are going to make things easier for guys like you that are still out on the street. How did you happen to get involved with Turning Point? Because again, we hear I live in a purple state, a swing state, and this is the
Yeah,
state where Charlie Kirk lives, the founder of Turning
absolutely.
Point. And but where I hear all the time, oh, he's bad, he's racist, he's sexist, he's a Christian national white supremacist, all that stuff.
None of it.
How'd y'all get involved in that organization?
It was a true blessing to bring the story because I could tell you it'd take hours. I actually fell into it. So when I was actually terminated from my sheriff's position as a deputy, I had free time, and this was right before COVID. So God planned all this, and I'm not saying I always tell people listen very clearly. I'm not saying COVID was designed for me for that I would prosper, but I actually have a different story during COVID. A lot of people died. We understand that through the ventilators and we got locked down with masks, but that is when I really hit the airwaves, and Blexit did as well, because what we were able to monopolize on and capitalize on was what everybody was at home and on social media. So we used the social media to really launch Blexit because Blexit had been set in motion by Candace Owens and Brandon, but they hadn't launched it yet. So a guy by the name of Pierre Wilson was the mastermind behind the chapter. So, and he was originally from North Carolina. He's in Florida now, but I'm in North Carolina. So we all connected that way. I went to a rally and somebody had heard about me. They said, hey, this guy, he posts on social media. He's a black conservative. Let's see what we can do to get him in. And from there, I got involved with Blexit and I became an employee and I rose the ranks to different positions. And we got involved with Turning Point because Candace and Brandon went into a contract with Charlie. He actually bought Blexit. So now Blexit falls under Turning Point and has some cool jobs under Turning Point within Blexit. So that's how we all kind of connected. And I'm guessing that Charlie's mindset was, hey, let's take the biggest black largest organization as it pertains to the conservative movement and mesh them with the largest conservative organization in the nation, that being Turning Point. So it was only a smart idea, and they've continued to grow. We're continuing to grow. I since have relinquished my position full time with them, but I am still a lifelong member, I would say, and I'm never going anywhere. And so I'm always going to try my best to promote and tell it how it all came about.
That's awesome. So,
Yeah.
so you've really been at the forefront of this whole vilify, demonize cops as of 2014. Then we saw this kind of resurgence into pride in the profession, after 2016. Then 2020, the death of George Floyd, all that stuff. And then, we were at the bottom again. And now in 2025, we're working our way back because, in part, because I think people saw that life without cops sucks and your neighborhood without cops sucks. And so give me your perspective on where you see the law enforcement profession going from here.
Absolutely. And another thing about my show prior to this, Real Talk, let me just throw a little plug there. The model of that show, which I've since retired, it was actually titled Model was this: we're never defund the police, but we're always defend the police. And so that was the model of that show. Of course, I retired that thing, but where I see this nation going right now in 2025 is number one, we have a president who always stood for law and order and for the military. And that's what it takes. It has to start from the top. And I mentioned that many years ago when Barack brought in I believe he worked at Harvard professor, the one that was accused of breaking into his own home, brought him down in the Rose Garden for beer and a burger, the double B. And he talked how police officers in that particular incident were acting stupidly, AKA called them stupid. That's when all things went downhill there. But we had a president in 2016 who was trying to nurture and bring back law enforcement. And then he's back again in 2025, and he's even doubled down on it. And we see that with DC, possibly Chicago, and other states that need a relifting and uplifting of law and order. And I know in my heart that every cop wants to go out there and do the right thing, but they're held down by the chief, who is ultimately held down by their city mayors. And so I believe they have a heart to serve, and we're not out here to beat people up or harass. And of course, the immigration stuff has been looped in, and they're thinking that we're out there trying to round up new immigrants. And that's not what the law enforcement job is. That's why, like especially ICE was created for them to handle those things. Now, we're going to help in some ways, but that's not why we're here. We don't put the uniform on to go beat up and kill and shoot.
No, we're just trying. Yeah, we're just trying to do our jobs. And that, Kash Patel says it best about once a week: let cops be cops.
That's it.
And do you think, I wish we had more time. Last question. Do you think we're going to be able to bring young people back to this profession? You see a lot of young people, you interact with them. What do you think?
I was actually in training about a week ago at a local community college where we house a law enforcement BLET program, which stands for Basic Law Enforcement Training, for them to go to school to become a cop. So I saw about 17 youngsters. They're all young in their early 20s. So I believe they're coming back to the profession. And as we watch law and order be restored once again, and again, at the top of it, at the helm of it, the president doubling down, and then if our governors and local officials double down and say, we're going to stand by the police, it's still the best profession on earth, they'll keep coming on in. But we want to set the standard that we're not taking any BS. We're getting people who are accountable, who are law-abiding citizens, speaking of the cops, and people who actually want to make a difference. We want you. So I do see that trajectory changing, and I am seeing more youngsters arrive in the profession, just how I've seen it at the airport where I'm assigned as a cop. I see a lot of young Marines coming in the door, flying and going to boot camp, or going to their destination from boot camp. And I'm amazed, and I want to tell everybody out there, because I see it, be reassured that we are getting them back into the military as well. I see a lot of women as well, young women entering the force, Marines to be exact. And so it's very uplifting, and it also reassures us that our country is getting back where it should have always been.
I love it. I do think America's back, baby.
Yes, it is.
Tell everybody where they can find you, connect with you, can they find the podcast, all your social media, everything.
Absolutely. If you're looking for me on Facebook, Antoine Thomas, and you'll see Fighting for the Truth. That is the profile logo underneath. But if you want to find me on any other social media platform, including Instagram, LinkedIn, and all those places, Fighting for the Truth Show. Put that in there, you'll find me. And we're off to a great start. Of course, the YouTube is where I'm looking to continue to grow that, because, again, I took a sabbatical, so I got to get back in there and re-up and get all those listeners back engaged, and then new listeners. YouTube, definitely find me there, Fighting for the Truth show.
Well, I'm looking forward to the day very soon when I can say, "Ooh, I know that guy," and
Yes.
everybody will know who I'm talking about. Antoine Thomas, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And if you'd like more information about the National Police Association, you can visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Every day, the brave men and women of law enforcement put their lives on the line to keep us safe. But they need our help to continue their mission. Activist politicians, progressive prosecutors, the ACLU, and the rest of the anti-police forces receive millions in donations from extremist pro-criminal elements like George Soros and woke corporations. The National Police Association is fighting them in courts around the country, including the United States Supreme Court, defending officers who are being attacked for doing their jobs. Additionally, the National Police Association works year-round to pass tough-on-crime legislation to put and keep criminals behind bars. Consider going to nationalpolice.org and donating to keep us in the fight. Together we can win. That is nationalpolice.org.